Well, surprise, surprise, it's another response video to Matt. So, on to the videotape.
My claim is, if that's true, and human beings are animals and part of nature, obviously, then human rationality and consciousness and freedom and responsibility and the legal system and politics and everything we consider to be part of the human cultural sphere is an illusion. It's impossible. It's all based on what the neo-Darwinists refer to as the selfish replicators housed in...
Yeah, well, Matt, look, you're breaking. Here you are, so clinging to such little minutia and detail, and then you'll in another argument you'll just strip all detail until you've made the truth unrecognizable, and so generalize the process that you're ignoring the details, and the details are where all the meaning is here. This is where you can make these distinctions. So let's go through it. We are programmed animals, deterministically, okay? You have to be exposed to something. It has to come in before it can come out, all right? It is programming. It could be stored in some other vessel. The physical brain I have now is the same brain human beings had 70,000 years ago anyway. And that brain, those brains are functioning completely differently. They have a completely different agenda, completely different perception and perspective because of the difference in how they've been informed and how they've been programmed. The same brain, it's the same basic brain that's in every villain and every hero. All it is programmed differently. The connections, the logic, the premises are all different. And that's basically what this is. So let's look at, and like I said, we know that there would be an enhancement of survivability for organisms to have a more sophisticated thinking machine, a capacity to understand their environment and manipulate it. All right, there is a point that's reached, though, where intelligence can exponentially grow. So when you create this language thing, as human beings did, now intelligence can just, it has almost an infinite potential in terms of at least how ordered it can become, and how every word can mean something, how every connection in our brain can be maximized to qualitatively and substantively model the world they live in. So we have maximized the potential of intelligence. So on a scale, the human being 70,000 years ago, or the great ape today, the common ape, if that's a 10, we're at 10 zillion or 10 million anyway. Just a huge growth in comprehension and understanding, and all of that takes place outside of any biological necessity. As I'm saying, it's the same biological brain as in the 70,000 year ago man, and that man wasn't doing anything very sophisticated. He wasn't behaving any more sophisticated than an ape with a pointy stick, and so that's where the biology ends. That's where the selfish gene ends. Its dominance, its control. Natural selection ends as the deciding factor, and now ideas are the thing that are evolving. Now, programming, instruments of understanding, and that sort of works through premises. We establish, when we're young, a basic premises are begins to establish in us, and then we verify those premises through experience and logic, and through gaining more information, and then we requalify those premises, and we go through that process, and eventually the premises become principles. They become things we live for and by. They become definitions of reality, definitions of a truth, and that's and the key component is, when you're talking about purpose, yes, the animal had no fucking purpose. A stupid animal picking his ass has no purpose. He's just trying to satisfy needs that never needed to be created, and that's the bottom line. I mean, it's a simple sentence, but without need, there's nothing to do. All right, a universe, if there's nothing needing anything, there's nothing to be accomplished. There's no doing. Okay, And so it's only through the creation of a need or a necessity, and that can only be created once you create something that's vulnerable and sensitive. So it's almost like we gain our purpose. I did a video a long time ago and had the word janitor in it, because that's basically, we gained our purpose when, I mean, the milk was spilt, but we became purposeful when we became a competent janitor. We're capable of being a janitor now. We're capable of fixing things. We're capable of applying our intelligence and doing something about the things that are broken, or unproductive, or inefficient. But it's only through acquiring that need, recognizing that need, that this needs to be done, that we become useful. So here, and another thing I do is let's just get rid of the word purpose. I mean, it implies intent, it implies things that there's just no way you can demonstrate any of that. And let's just deal with the word useful. Okay? Because that's what the bottom line is. Life can't have any use, because before its existence there was no necessity that it exists. There was no need that it satisfied. It's not doing anything. All it's doing is spilling milk. And so now we have acquired the skills to be able to do something about the milk spilling, but once the milk is cleaned up, we're back to zero again, because it's still, you have to create the negative for there to have any possibility of there existing a positive. And that's just the cruel truth of reality, is that there's nothing to be accomplished unless you create some deprivation, unless you create some need. You have to drill holes in the goddamn universe before there's any purpose in filling anything, and that's all living things can possibly do. That's the only purpose they can acquire, is to fill some holes, is to literally and figuratively, and that's it. That's the game. So anyway, let's move on. I just finished the whole video right there.
I don't think it's true that evolution is understandable or explainable in completely non-teleological terms.
Yeah, and I don't know how you can possibly explain it any other way. How can you defend purpose at creation? The crude forces creating a reproducing machine. How can you impose purpose on that and say there was a mission, that there was some obligation that needed to be fulfilled, that there was when the first molecules combined, that they were doing it deliberately, okay, that they knew that in the end they would spill milk and then create, janitors to clean up the milk, and somehow that would all make sense. No, I'm sorry, there's no, you can't describe or define any kind of intelligence or any kind of logic or any kind of rationale for the origins of life. There just isn't any. And unless you're going to describe this God, you're creating a placeholder for, by saying you can't do this, you can't describe humanity without defining its purpose, or without innately knowing it has one. Well, that's the same thing as saying a God created it. So point to this God, tell me who he is, tell me what he's doing, tell me the logic that's compelling him to think he's doing this for a purpose. I mean, even the stupid silly God of the theists, he has the human ambition. I must create life and a planet and things because I want it. I mean, it was a God of want, a God of need. Somehow God was lonely or something.
If you talk about adaptation, you're already implying some form of purpose or drive that organisms have. But my feeling is that unless we root purpose and teleology and consciousness right at the very beginning of life, there's no way to derive it at some point between that beginning and human beings. And if we do so, it's just an art.
Well, of course there is, because we can acquire tools that enable us to see reality and enable us to understand how the mechanism works, and therefore now we can be useful. But purpose, again, to imply purpose is to imply that the creation itself had purpose. The fact that you can have something that isn't deliberately made doesn't mean that the thing doesn't have a purpose. I'm sure there was lots of happy accidents throughout human history where the intent was to do one thing and they discovered something new and they said, this has use, this is a good thing, even though it wasn't their intention to create the thing they created.